Hello everyone and welcome back to the studio. My name is Jake Dean and today we have a very special guest. She comes from Helena High School. She teaches AP Euro and AP US History for our 11th graders here. Ironically, she took my dad's job 2 years ago. And please welcome with me Miss Anita Lewis. Miss Lewis, how are you today?
Doing well, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, before we started this, actually, we had an original take, but we had some audio problems, so we're having to redo our first part of our interview. It's a little awkward to like talk about the same things again, but you know.
I'm sure we'll do better this
time. We'll do better. We've had a practice round. So, Miss Lewis, we're coming off of a long break. Today is Wednesday off that break, and I still haven't gotten my sleep schedule back, and it's still so hard to wake up. So how was your Thanksgiving, Miss Lewis?
It was great. I got to take it easy. We went over to my mother-in-law's house, and she cooked, and that is the other Miss Lewis's mother.
Other Miss Lewis.
Because, you know, we're related. So it was really fun. It was really easy. I just brought some pies, and we got to eat and run. Didn't have to clean the house like you mentioned before.
Didn't have to clean the house. That's what we were talking about earlier. The joy of not having to host for Thanksgiving because my mom makes me clean my room. But it's like, I always wonder, like, are we eating in my room? Are people going to be in my room?
But we agreed that your mom is right.
She is correct.
Everything should
be
clean.
She is right.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Miss Lewis, like I just said, you're now teaching AP Euro this year.
Yes.
That's something new on your agenda.
Yes.
Taking it from the glorious Mr. Crew.
Yes.
That has been here many years. So y'all just went on a field trip, didn't y'all?
Yes, we went to the Birmingham Museum of Art.
Nice, nice. I've never been. Was it was a good trip?
It was great. You should go. Our museum is great, and it has all kinds of exhibits. Some are permanent, some rotate. And Mr. Gunn and Mr. Croom went with us.
Wow.
Mr. Croom was a surprise. Mr. Gunn was it was so great because he was so happy to be on board with it. When I went to him to get permission for it, he was like, yeah, and I want to go with you. And so we loved it, and the kids loved having him. So it was a good day.
Wow, it's very, I mean, I wish I could have gone.
I know.
That sounds like an amazing trip. And Mr. Croom with a special visit. That's always great.
Yeah, he was sitting outside the museum. He meant to be more of a surprise, like inside, but we weren't sure when we pull up.
You should have worn like a disguise.
Right. Well, it was funny because we drive by and everybody's looking out the window. They're like, Mr. Croom's sitting out there, and they thought it was just a big coincidence at first, but it was funny because it wasn't. It was a surprise.
All right. So we talked before this interview. We had this idea of like a little fun interview. We have a little casual day. I'm not dressed up like I usually am. Well, of course I'm dressed up. I mean,
it's okay.
Repping the win after the Iron Bowl. So we had this idea that we were going to do our top 5 presidents of all time.
Yes.
So we're going to go from number 5 all the way up to number 1, our GOATs of our greatest of all time for the American presidency.
Yes.
If you don't mind, I'd like to start us off with my number 5.
Please do.
Making this, I really thought, like, I was trying to think, I was like, there's some great presidents out there, but then yet again, they equally did, like, horrible things.
Right. It's a hard list to make. There's got to be a lot of explanation.
Explanation. I was going to put Woodrow Wilson, because, you know, like, he did all this stuff for League of Nations, you know, peace, 13 points. 14 points, my bad. 14 points. You know, basically got us out of World War I, but then, like, you look at the other side, you know, it's like,
right.
You know, he was, you know, birth of the nation.
Yeah, not good times.
Not really, you know, an upside to his person. So my number 5, I feel like this is like a sleeper pick. Nobody really thinks about this guy, but it's LBJ.
Oh yeah, love LBJ.
Lyndon B. Johnson.
I like that. He almost made it on my list just because he's, as I told you in class, he's a character. He's the reason there's, you know, expletives in the textbook kind of thing.
Yeah.
So he passes a lot of good legislation, but he's definitely got his personal issues too. But a great pick for civil rights for sure.
Yeah, great guy. And then, like, you know, Civil Rights Act 64, 68, and then also voting rights of 65. Yeah, 65. You know, all amazing legislature, great stuff that he did, and honestly, like without him, the Civil Rights Act really, or the Civil Rights Movement wouldn't really have had such an impact that it did.
Right. I mean, he ran that legislation through when no one else could, for sure. He deserves a spot on the top 5. I had to shimmy some people around and decided not to put him on mine. I think my number 5 will surprise you just because he's down at number 5.
Oh, wow.
You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Abraham Lincoln.
Wow.
Okay, so Lincoln has to make the top 5 for me.
He does.
But like we said, you can't just say best for everything. Like, is he best personality? Is he best legislation? Is he best as a leader? So he's got to go on there for everything he did for the nation and wins the Civil War and frees the slaves. But in terms of like charisma and is he as interesting to study, he made it to that's what put him at 5. Maybe because it's almost cliche. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, I don't want to put just the Mount Rushmore on my list. Like that's boring. Right. Like you can't be like a bandwagon president lover.
Right. So who's your 4?
All right. My number 4, a lot of people put this as number 1, but number 4 is George Washington.
Okay.
Good old George.
Yep.
I was trying to think, and I was like, I had to put George Washington on my top 5. Like, first president. There was some downsides to him. Slavery was a thing. But then, if you look at it, all that he did for a nation when it was starting up, going through establishing our Constitution that we still use today.
Yep.
Such a great president, I believe. Really good one.
He's on my list, but he's not number 4. Yeah. Let me think. So we're doing this. Who is my number 4? Number 4, Dad Bush, George H.W. Bush.
George H.W. Bush,
right.
Dad Bush.
And this has a nostalgia factor for me. Like, I was a kid when he was president. I think he has a great presidential resume. He was head of the CIA. He was a congressman. He was a World War II vet. And I think since he's a one-termer, we can kind of forget him. But he's ending out the Cold War for us. He handles Kuwait really well, and I just love the persona that he put out there. He was more moderate. He loved his family. He was a man of faith. So that's sort of like for me, it's just a personal nostalgia thing, not because he's just top tier, but wanted him to be on my list. Yeah.
I can tell you that on Mr. Dean's list, Dean Sr., my father, he loves H.W. Bush.
See, we're connected.
You're connected with that. And he is such a president that nobody really remembers him.
Right. Well, see, your dad and I are the same age, so he probably has that same thing going on. We remember when he was president.
Yeah. All right. My number 3. This is probably going to hurt your feelings. My
then
number 3 is
I'm already hurt.
Teddy Roosevelt.
Wrong.
Teddy Roosevelt.
Cut. All right. So I'm glad he made your top 5, though.
So Teddy Roosevelt was a great president. We had trust busting. Breaking up monopolies. He's that president that kind of comes in when all the presidents before him didn't do anything. And then he comes in and he does all this work for the people, starts out the progressive movement. All that great stuff. Panama Canal, great. But then there's one thing that I was thinking about. It's bad neighbor policy, Miss Liz.
Yeah.
He was a bad neighbor.
Right.
And nobody likes a bad neighbor.
Right.
I mean,
true.
It is during imperialism, kind of that era. But then yet again, I feel like that kind of tanks his spot.
Right.
It brings him down a couple positions.
Yeah. I don't feel that way, but I think that's a good point. I mean, one of the things I love about Teddy is he's so duplicitous. So when you study him, it's interesting. I love this, but then why were you doing this kind of thing? So you're not wrong. That's kind of a bad move, but doesn't hurt his spot on my list.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so we're on number 3. Number 3, I think he might be your number 1. Number 3 for me is Franklin Roosevelt, FDR. Love what he did for the New Deal. I think a lot of people think it went too far, but I think you have to appreciate that he was helping people who needed it the most and took a different look at how you define freedom and liberty. And I come from a family's background, that lower class who were definitely struggling during the Depression. So, you want that kind of president who's willing to make change like that. So that's my number 3.
Yeah. I mean, he's still top 3. Like
Yeah,
he's in
yeah.
your top 3, so that's I'll let it slide. I'll let it slide. All right, my number 2, getting top 2 presidents.
Right.
My number 2, Abraham Lincoln.
Okay, nice.
All right, you know, amazing.
Can't go wrong with that.
Amazing president. You know, Emancipation Proclamation, all that stuff. You know, brought us out of the Civil War. Amazing president. Also a vampire slayer.
Right,
You know,
as they say.
I
yes.
completely forgot about that movie.
He's
until I was
instrumental
looking
in
up.
creating the Transcontinental Railroad. People don't realize how much he was like a railroad geek. Like
Yeah.
he really wanted it to happen for the future. So in some ways for national markets, as much as the Civil War, he does a lot.
Yeah.
So wait, that's number 2, right?
Yes.
Number 2 for me is George Washington.
George Washington.
Yeah.
Yes.
So definitely set the precedent
Mm-hmm.
for humility and trying to make sure that all our liberties are, you know, carried out by the executive as well. So love him for that.
All right. Now my number 1, president of all time, the GOAT. You already said it's FDR.
Right.
FDR is my favorite president. You know, he did just so much for when America was just in a terrible time. You know, he also does fireside chats. He brings in the use of media to build his campaign. I just thought he was an amazing
Little plug
president.
for this class.
Yeah, especially, you know, in the time that he was president, he was just a great leader and amazing person.
Mm-hmm. And he overcame so many, you know,
Obstacles,
yeah, his physical disability didn't stop him, and that's pretty admirable.
Yeah.
My number 1, no secret, Teddy Roosevelt, the other Roosevelt. I just love him for how he redefines the presidency, for how he is kind of middle road. He is a Republican, but takes it with a progressive bent.
Yeah.
So I like to be middle road politically, appreciate both sides of what's going on. I think Teddy embodies that for sure. And I just love that, you know, he's an outdoorsman and a scholar, and he's a soldier, but gentle with his family, and you know, he'll bust a trust if it's too big, but he loves commerce and keeping the country running. All those facets of his personality just amaze me. So.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. But of course, the other Roosevelt's better, you know. All right, well, thank you, Ms. Lewis, for coming in today.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
We had a great discussion about, you know, best presidents of all time.
Yes.
And I appreciate you coming and talking with us.
I appreciate the invite. I hope y'all have a good day.
All right. Thank you all for watching. You can follow us on all of our social media handles at OakMTN Media. And thank you for watching. We had Ms. Lewis in today. It was a great interview. And see y'all next time.